Good morning. Welcome back. We're glad you've come to be with us again today. My name is Sherry Marks. I'm the pastor of the Church of the Open Door in Ukiah, California, and we welcome you here for our Sunday service and the message that goes with it. Our service on Sundays for video, as long as we are meeting in person as well, is simply a message and followed by communion. And if you would like to participate in communion with us, you can put us on pause for a moment and go and get something to drink, a piece of bread or a cracker or something that you can use to share with us when the moment comes that we all share together. We'll be here. Okay. Our reading today comes from Luke chapter 6, the entirety of this message comes from verses 17 through 38. That's a very, very long reading altogether, and so I'm only going to be reading here at the beginning from verses 17 to 26. He came down with them and stood on a level place with a great crowd of his disciples. A multitude of people from all Judea, Jerusalem, and the coast of Tyre and Sidon had come to hear him and to be healed. Then he looked up at his disciples and said, "Blessed are you who are poor, for yours is the kingdom of God. Blessed are you who are hungry now, for you will be filled. Blessed are you who weep now, for you will laugh. Blessed are you when people hate you and when they exclude you, revile you, and defame you, all on my account. But woe to you who are rich, for you have received your consolation. Woe to you who are full now, for you will be hungry. Woe to you who are laughing now, for you will mourn and weep. Woe to you when all speak well of you, for that is what their ancestors did to the false prophets." Now, most of us are familiar with the Beatitudes as they appear in Matthew's Gospel, but this is the same story as it's told in Luke's Gospel. The two versions are very similar, as we might expect, but there are some distinct differences. This is actually a rather long reading, and as I said, I'm only going to speak at the beginning of this message from the first part of the reading. But later on, I'll be referring to some things from the latter part. If you would like to read the entire chapter, I'll repeat that. It's Luke chapter 6, verses 17 through 38. Excuse me. This takes place very early in Jesus' public life. After his time alone in the wilderness, Luke's version of things says that Jesus spent a goodly while just traveling around, often by himself, and teaching and healing. There have been several significant healings before today's event, as well as a number of teachings. He also gathered followers to himself as he moved around, specifically calling those who would be his closest disciples, the 12, as well as attracting crowds who heard of him and came out to see and to hear him wherever he went. Today's reading begins with one small but oddly specific difference from Matthew's version. Matthew's is, of course, referred to as the Sermon on the Mount, and tells of Jesus climbing a hill so everyone could see and hear him. Luke makes a point of saying that he came down with them and stood on a level place. This one is often called the Sermon on the Plain, in direct contrast to Matthew's Mount. Certainly not an important point, just an odd one. A more pertinent difference lies in the fact excuse me, I definitely have got a frog this morning. A more pertinent difference lies in the fact that Matthew's list is all about blessings, while Luke's is a mixture of 4 blessings and 4 woes. The most important point to keep in mind when we read this list of blessings and woes is that Jesus here is being descriptive rather than prescriptive. This is an important difference, and it makes a huge difference in how we understand what Jesus is saying here. If Jesus was being prescriptive, he would be saying, in effect, that God is going to do these things to you, or for you in the case of blessings. In other words, that the result is going to come from outside yourself in the form of either a gift or a punishment. But Jesus is being descriptive here. He's simply describing how it is, rather like Scrooge's Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come, who doesn't say, this will be done to you by some outside agency because of the selfish things you do, but this is the way your future looks because of who you already are. This all goes back to last week's message on trusting God. Those who are blessed are those who know that everything they are, everything they have, is from God, and not because they themselves are rich or brilliant or clever or somehow especially deserving. Yes, we work for what we want and need, but it is God ultimately who provides our abilities. These are the people who know that weeping and struggling come to all people, but they also know that God will be with them and see them through their struggles. These are the people who can be filled and content with enough of the world's goods because they are also filled with God's love and care. They don't need excess of anything. They are blessed, and they trust in that blessing. On the other hand, those who are rich and comfortable and well-fed now, especially the rich who can waft through life seemingly never noticing the hunger, the despair that's all around them. These believe their good luck is all the result of their own specialness. They have got grief ahead of them when their source of their worldly goods dries up and the glamorous friends drift away. When illness and loss happen to them, as they do to all people, and they find their money cannot do anything to stop it, and never having bothered to trust God, preferring to trust their own strengths, they find themselves with no resources to see them through. These blessings and woes could take 2 or 3 sermons to do them justice, but I'm going to leave them here because I want to at least touch on some other points from the second part of this long reading, the parts I didn't read aloud earlier. These are small sayings, tossed in almost casually by the writer of Luke, and yet they are pivotal points of belief for those who call themselves followers of Jesus. It's hard to imagine calling ourselves Christians without an awareness of these sayings. Some of them are very uncomfortable, such as, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, and pray for those who abuse you. I wish that more had been written about this one, because this one is complicated. We can understand its intent, and even love your enemies is not that difficult to comprehend or to imagine doing. But this whole thing should most certainly never be used casually against one who has suffered serious abuse at the hands of another. There are few things more cruel than to tell an abuse victim that they should love their enemy and pray for them, before they've had any chance to heal themselves. As I said, this one is hard and requires a lot of reflection. The second one, if anyone strikes you on the cheek, offer the other also. And from anyone who takes away your coat, do not withhold even your shirt. I read somewhere once that this is actually a backhanded insult. We like to tell ourselves that our culture is a level playing field. It isn't, but we still like to think so. But the culture of Jesus' time was definitely not level, and the consequences for striking back at someone higher than you could be extremely serious. But they couldn't just beat you bloody either. Therefore, to turn the other cheek, to look them in the eye and basically dare them to hit you again, was the same as publicly calling them a coward. Now, I don't know if this is what Jesus had in mind or not, but it is an interesting interpretation here. Okay, next. Give to everyone who begs from you, and if anyone takes away your goods, do not ask for them again. This is not so problematic as some of the others, because Jesus is repeating one of his most common themes, that the things of this world are just things, and we should not be so attached to them. So if someone else has a need greater than yours, then share with them. God will take care of the balance. And then there is, do unto others as you would have them do to you. This one needs almost no explanation. It's so basic that almost every culture before and after Jesus has included it in its moral, ethical code. Some long before Jesus ever said these words. And he was quoting from Jewish law long before his time. A quick scan of the internet, and I do mean quick, like 15 seconds worth, found at least 10 different cultures with similar sayings. So I'm sure there are many, many more. Do to others as you would have them do to you. And the last one of these sayings is pretty simple too. Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. People get hung up on the first one of these most often, in my experience. And this is not telling us that people should not be held accountable for their misdeeds, but simply not to hold ourselves as better than the ones we judge, because any of us are vulnerable to falling into error ourselves. Matthew's version of this one statement adds, the judgment you make will be the one by which you will be judged. Luke chapter 6 is where all of this is found, and it's one very, very busy chapter. For all that I've crammed in here today, there's so much more that I left out. So much of what shapes and forms us as believers is found right here in this one chapter. And I'll close with one more quote, one more exhortation to live the life that God lays out for us. And this is from the same chapter, of course. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners love those who love them. If you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners do the same. If you lend to those from whom you hope to receive, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners to receive as much again. But love your enemies, do good, and lend, expecting nothing in return. Your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High. Perhaps I've inspired you to take some time and sit down and read this 6th chapter of Luke, all just for yourself. It's an eye-opener. A lot of good stuff in there. Amen. Jesus was not one for breaking the rules, but he was one for expanding on them, making them broader than they had originally been stated. My cat. When he was gathered together with his friends that last night, what he was doing was repeating an ancient ritual, already ancient, hundreds of years old at that time, recalling the time that God set the people free from slavery in Egypt and brought them in time to their own promised land. There were ritualized actions and ritualized words involved in this meal. And Jesus did all of those with his friends. But he also added to them. He added new words and new actions. And those words and those actions are the core of who and what we are when we gather together as believers and followers of Jesus. Because at the time that there came a ritual passing of the bread about, Jesus took the bread and he blessed it and he lifted it up and he offered it to the one that he called Father. And then he said these words, and as he said words, new words that they had not heard before, he broke the bread and he said, "This bread is my body, the bread of the new and the everlasting covenant. The one that cannot be broken. This is me, and I'm giving myself for you now." And then he took the cup, and again, this is part of the set ritual, and it would be passed around for everyone to drink from it. And he added new words and new meaning to it for us. And he said, "This cup is the blood of the new and the everlasting covenant." He said, "This cup is my own life's blood poured out and given for you. Take it and drink it, and I am with you." And so whenever we gather together, we break the bread of our salvation and we drink the cup of our hope, and we know that Jesus is with us and in us and always will be. And we know that we are gathered together with God and always will be. And we know that we are loved. So eat and drink, and know that we are one. And I apologize for my somewhat insistent cat today, who's determined to join us. Once again, thank you for coming and joining us here today. Thank you for being with us and sharing with us. May whatever you've learned here today, whatever you've taken in here, may you carry it with you throughout the week. And may you in turn pass it on to those who need to share in the love of Christ. Go in peace. May your week be blessed.
Founded on love, welcome and hope, with a church of the open door. You are welcome here. We invite you in to share the bread, to share